How's it going? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time as a listener, thank you for joining us. If you're a reoccurring listener, thank you for joining us once again. If the subject and the contents of coaching, leadership, and team is something that you're passionate about and resonates with you, think this channel is a great fit, think this podcast is a great fit, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Have a great day. How's it going? This is Keanu Yamamoto with the Coachers Podcast. In here with Coach Ad Rutschman, legendary Linfield head football and baseball coach. Coach Rutschman won 3 national championships with football and 1 with baseball, and was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 1998. Coach, thanks for jumping on. Please tell us about your family, journey, background, all that good stuff.
Well, I was born in Hillsboro, raised in younger years in a farm about 7 miles outside of Hillsboro. Had a brother that was 2 years younger, and went to college at Linfield College and got married my summer of my sophomore year in college, and we ended up by having 5 kids. My first job, when I graduated from Linfield, I had an opportunity to sign a football contract with the Detroit Lions, a baseball contract with the Detroit Tigers, and had a job offer from my high school coach. He became the principal. I got fast talked into, I got a call from a scout, and he wanted to meet me at the Multnomah Hotel in Portland, and I went in there, but at that time they didn't have any agents or anything like that, and the salaries of the NFL were about $6,000 a year. And I got fast talked into signing a contract. And then I got offered a contract with the Toronto Argonauts, and they basically said they'd beat any American offer. And the Canadian League was stealing ball players from the American League at that time, and there was lawsuits going between the leagues, and I had already signed, and I was confused. I had no advice from anybody, and so I took the easy way out. I took the offer from my high school principal to go and teach high school, and that's how I ended up back at, it was like a rubber ball, a tennis ball. I went from graduating from Hillsboro High School to Linfield, and then my first job was back at Hillsboro, and my second job was back at Linfield, and that was basically it. But we had 5 kids, and then in 1968, I was offered the job at Linfield, and actually took that job, but took a 1/3 cut in salary to go from high school to college teaching and coaching. But I could do it because my oldest son, Don, was a sophomore, and in 2 years, he'd get free tuition at Linfield. And I figured that we had 14 years, would have 1 of our kids in college, and 10 of those 14 years would have 2 in college at the same time. And that's how I could justify taking that. Otherwise, I would stayed at Hillsboro. And so that's kind of the way that things went for me. And then I just stayed at Linfield and had some other job offers at different levels, but that's pretty much the history of the family. All of our kids turned out to be good people and be productive citizens. And looking back, I don't think I would have done anything different if I'd had good advice.
Yeah, no, that was going to be my question. Was there ever a point in your career where you're like, man, what if I went and actually pursued
Well,
playing in the pros?
those things cross your mind, but basically things turned out very good for me. I mean, I can't complain about anything. So I kind of always had a rule that be careful of trying to improve on happy. And if you're happy with what you're doing, be careful of trying to, just because you might make more money doing something else, are you going to be happier? And I've seen too many examples of where people have gone from one job to another and basically they haven't been happy. And so anyway, that's kind of my family history. I raised early years on a farm, and that had an impact on me too.
Yeah. What was the why behind wanting to get into coaching?
That's interesting because I took a interest test when I was a senior in high school to find out what career opportunities would fit me. And two things stood out to me. I showed an outdoor interest, but two things on that list. One of them was wildlife management, and the other was teaching and coaching. And so why did teaching and coaching fit into outdoor type of thing? Well, I don't know, but it did. And at the same time, I was graduating from high school, and Kip Taylor was a football coach at Oregon State, and he offered me a scholarship to come and play football. And I really was pretty serious about that because Oregon State is good in wildlife management. But I found out that wildlife management, you had to have a background in chemistry. And I had not had chemistry in high school, and I thought starting in college is not a good time to start chemistry. I would be probably way down the list as the good students in the chemistry department. And so that changed my mind to go into coaching. And so at that time, all of my high school coaches, and looking around the league and everything else, all of the coaches were coaching multiple sports. My high school football coach was also a track coach. My baseball coach was also the basketball coach. They all coached multiple sports. And I thought, if I'm going to go into coaching, I'm going to be better prepared if I'm going to play more than one sport. And so I told Kip Taylor that I wanted to play both football and baseball. And he told me that we could work that out, but he wanted me at spring practice. And so spring practice would be at baseball during baseball season. And spring practice would conflict with baseball. But he told me that he would release me on game days. Well, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but if I'm going to practice football all week and not practice baseball, and then all of a sudden I'm going to go over on the baseball diamond on game days only, and if the coach is going to play me ahead of guys that are practicing there, I'm not going to be very popular. And I'm not going to have success because I've not been practicing, and that is not going to work out. So that changed my mind, and I ended up going to Linfield because at Linfield I could play not only football and baseball, but I ended up by playing basketball also. So looking back, I wouldn't change anything, but you also look and say, well, what would have happened if I'd have gone there? You don't know. But it worked out good for me. But that's how I ended up in coaching rather than wildlife management.
Yeah. Kind of on that same trajectory there. When you first started coaching, and this is something that I kind of went through when I stepped away from ball and I want to start the podcast. Like I didn't really begin with the end in mind. All I knew is I wanted to start, because if I didn't start, I was going to lose, the passion and willingness to actually do it. So I guess when you first got into coaching, did you begin with the end in mind? Like, hey, I wanted to be a great coach. Like, what was the mindset in that?
I love sports, and I wanted to be involved. And in my first year at Hillsboro, I coached all three sports: football, basketball, baseball, and I coached on the freshman level, all three sports. And then I gradually, the second year, the head baseball coach took a different job, and they made me the baseball coach. And so my second year out, I was a baseball coach. And then the third year out, the football coach left, and they asked me to be the football coach, and so I was coaching, but I don't think I ever had any real desire to be, a head coach or a great head coach. I just wanted to be involved in sports, that was it. But then after I got involved, then I also wanted to win. It's for some reason it's more fun when you win.
No doubt, coach. No doubt. At what point in your career did you feel like really good about who you were as a coach, who you were about your process, who you were about your operation?
It didn't happen as fast as I thought that it would, because I thought that I could really get things done, immediately, if not sooner. And it took several years, to get the program where I wanted it. My first year coaching baseball was predominantly underclassmen that I had, and we took our lumps, but that's the only year in my whole coaching career, I think, that we ever took our lumps. After that, we were ended up by being pretty competitive, and then pretty doggone good.
One thing I loved when I first showed up as a freshman at Linfield, and I'm not sure if you still do it, but you come up and you give a speech, and it's your input equals output speech. Can you kind of touch on just that mindset, and if you still go about giving those speeches during freshman introduction?
Yes, they normally ask me to do that, and the high school coaches normally they request it. They want me to go over it with their kids, but I totally believe and it doesn't make any difference whether you're 5 years old or whether you're 90 years old. Input, what goes into your head, and that primarily comes in through your eyes and ears, other than what you communicate to yourself. And most of the communication you do to yourself is negative. So you have to be careful of that. It's how many people have said, I can't, or I don't want to, or I don't like that, or something. And then that's the input. And so what's the thinking? The thinking is, I don't want it, I don't like it, or whatever it happens to be. And the attitude is that, and then the performance is you don't do it. Yeah. And so you have to change input to, I'm willing to try, or to I think I can, to I know I can, to I will, to I must, that type of thinking. And it happens even in football. People say, I just can't do that. And you put them in a position to where they're in a perfect position to do it. And then you blow the whistle and they do it and they have success at it. And so they know that they can do it. And so now, so what, to me, it's a real important part of, who you associate with, what you listen to, what you read, and stuff like this has a huge impact. And, I heard one time that who you associate with is like being on an elevator. It's either going to take you up or take you down.
That's a
There's a lot
great
to
quote.
that. Yeah, there's a lot to that. And it's the same thing as what you read, what you watch, who you listen to, what you listen to is like being on an elevator. It's going to take you up or take you down, you know. So to me, input affects your thinking affects your attitude, and that basically attitude triggers everything that you're going to do. It affects what you say, it affects how you look, it affects basically everything you do.
Yeah. I love this. I love this. This is great stuff. I am curious, like, when was that? Like, when did you develop that mindset, input equals output? Like, when did
Well,
that become, I guess, concrete with who you are as a coach?
I'll tell you, in about 1962, we won. I was coaching at Hillsboro, and we won our first state baseball championship. And I won a award, a Pops Award. It's a chewing gum company, and they sent me a
Is that just
folder.
like the trading cards now? Same company? Does that
Could
kinda turn
be.
into the trading card company? Okay.
Probably. But anyway, they sent me a folder. They wanted to know what my philosophy of winning was. I'd never been asked that question. And I thought, what the heck is my philosophy? And I got to thinking, and a part of it was something I can't come up with a date, but it could have been when I was in high school as a student, but someplace early in my life, uh, I I came up with I don't know if it was reading a newspaper or listening to the news on the radio or what, but you see it today that the quality of a person's life is based upon the choices they make. And if you make, and our young people today, they have to make maybe 100 different choices every day, and if they make good choices, it's going to lead to good things. But if they make bad choices, it's going to lead to either failure or it's going to lead to potential problems. Or so, and so I came up with the idea that the quality of my life was going to be based upon the choices that I make. And then I said, okay, but what gives me the guidelines to make good choices? And I thought, well, that's got to be part of that has to be what I value and believe in and end up by being principles also. So I took a piece of paper on out and I put at the top of the paper, I wrote down values, beliefs, and principles. And then I started making a list of values and things like honesty, a work ethic, a commitment to excellence, handling adversity, teamwork, positive attitude, neat appearance, courage to make the right decisions, and the toughness to stand behind those things, and a whole bunch of those things. And then I took things that I believed in, and I came up with 3 laws: the law of life, the law of attraction, and the law of positive expectation. And the law of life was that every word and every action has a consequence. And so think before you act, think before you speak, and because there is a consequence. And I believe that. And the law of attraction, and that is your energy, your actions, and your achievements are going to go in the direction of your thinking. So back to that input, thinking, attitude, performance. Your energy, your action, and your achievements are going to go in the direction of your thinking. So you have to control thinking. If you don't control that, then you're like a river with no banks. It's just going to flow in the direction of least resistance. And the law of attraction is if you do things right, eventually good things will happen. So, and then I came up with a formula for success. That is so simple it's scary. It's goal, plan, believe, action, deviate. Have a goal, then come up with a plan, and ask yourself a question. Do you believe in your plan? And if you do, put it in action and don't deviate. It's so simple, but it's scary. But it's not quite that simple. Your plan, I believe, some of it has to be measurable. It's like if you're a salesman and you're going to not make every sale. How many phone calls do you have to make every week to make one sale? Well, that's something you can measure. If I'll always remember, I had a football player at Linfield that came up to the office and he wanted to talk about his goal for next year. And I said, "What is your goal, Joe?" And he said, I'd like to make the All-Star team, all conference team." And I said, "What's your plan?" He says, "I'm going to work hard." I said, "Not good enough." And I can remember looking out my window we were in the old Riley building at the time, and there was a flagpole. And I said, "I believe you could go out there and climb that flagpole all day long. I'm not sure that's going to do it." and you're going to work like a dog. And he says, well, I'm going to lift weights. And I said, not good enough. What days are you going to lift? Are you going to lift upper body Monday, Wednesday, Friday, lower body Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday? Now you set the days you can measure it. Yeah. So if you believe in your plan, then and people don't reach their goals in one or two areas because of something in the planning area, or they have a good plan and they deviate. I don't feel good today, so I'm not going to lift today, and all of a sudden that plan starts growing wings, and so that was another thing. And another belief was, a formula for winning. That's just people, preparation, performance. And that is you hire the right people, and now you prepare. And if you've got the right people and you've done a good job of preparing, it's just a matter of performing.
Yeah.
And to me, it doesn't make any difference whether it's football player, whether you've hired a business person. That's the formula. If you don't have good people, you're not going to get it done. And then to me, a successful marriage is pretty simple. This is one of the beliefs, and that is find the right person and then be the right person. But there's so many different things that fit right into that same thing. If you're a football coach, you need assistants, you got to find the right person, and then you got to be the right person. If you're an employer hiring, you got to find the right employee and then be the right employer. You've got kids, now you got to be the right father, and it's not easy, but to me, it's absolute. These are some of my values and some of my beliefs. In 1962, I had this background of kind of things that I had developed a little bit, but this question was, what is your philosophy of winning? And I thought to myself, why do we have sports? And it has to fit into education. And to me, this is a problem we have right today. But to me, my number one job always has been to build people. And my number two job is to build a program. And in order to do that, if I can do those two things, then to some degree, winning takes care of itself. Well, they gave me this big sheet of paper, and the only thing I wrote on there is my philosophy is develop people, and number one, and number two, develop a program. And if I do that, winning to some degree takes care of itself. Well, it didn't turn, I guess it was okay. They accepted it, but there was a whole sheet of paper that was blank. But
Right.
I've never changed my mind. I think that's the number one job.
That's good stuff, Coach. Just when you're talking there, I got your book right here. I read it probably January time, but I went back. I mean, I highlighted a lot of stuff, and so there was probably about 4 or 5 quotes that you just referenced that you're just talking about. Actually, more like 8 to 10. That all of it is some stuff I highlighted in the book. And then I went back today and I just I went through about half the book, and then I folded the pages on some quotes that stuck out to me. And I wanted to bring it up to you and, have you kind of talk about it and digest it, if you don't mind doing that.
Sure.
Yeah. So this one struck a chord. This was speaking about your late wife. She was known for teaching their children, it's nice to be important, but more important to be nice.
Yep. And boy, she made that real clear to our kids. And she also was able to do that with her work study people up there in the office. She was my secretary up there for the entire time that I was up there.
That's awesome, Coach. Another one was mental precedes the physical, which I think is exactly what you just talked about
Yep.
for the last 10
Yep.
minutes, as far as input equals output. And, just reading this and then hearing you speak, man, it just seems like you were so ahead of the curve when it comes to sports psychology. So if you could kind of think back, like, what were you pulling a lot of this material and a lot of this philosophy and I guess principles from? Was that just kind of accumulated through experience? Was that accumulated through, other coaches? Where did all that insight come from?
I probably picked most of it up, just here and there, with things that fit into my thinking, and it's the same way with you, you're going to pick up things listening to other people talk or read about or something that fits into your line of thinking, and you end up adopting it. And so that's, I'm sure, how most of this, because I can't tell you where I come up with this or that, but I doubt it if most of these beliefs I had to pick up, someplace else,
Mhm.
and it's
There's a
probably here and there, and it's not, they're probably not any one of these that are any bunch of these that came out of one source.
Yeah. Here's another one. This was, you talking about people preparation and performance. This was under the people section. It says, Rutschman came away believing that most problems are at their core people problems, and the basics for success were pretty much the same regardless of the industry.
Yep.
I
I
thought I
mean,
thought that was, can you kind of touch on that a little bit?
well, to me, there are technical problems, there are human skill problems, there are conceptual problems. In other words, the conceptual problems would be people that have tunnel vision. They can't see the total picture. They think that they're the most important thing in their organization. They can't see how they're just a piece of the pie. Those people can create a problem. I had a talk with a person that's taking a new job here in the last year. I told him, I said, I think that uh, every person that you hire as a coach, you should ask them how important they think speech and drama is, and music and art and things like that. And I think that every person you hire as a faculty member, you should ask them how important athletics are to the university or high school or whatever, and how important speech and music and things like that are, because my belief is everything at this school is important. And if coaches can't see that, then you're hiring a problem. And if faculty members can't see that, then you're hiring a problem or a potential problem. And to me, they've got to believe that everything is important, and we are going to support everything.
That's good, Coach. That's good stuff. Here's another one. And this one's powerful. And, I didn't have a lot of conversations with coaches and just kind of the impact of coaches, and always asking the coaches, what their why is. But this one kind of hit home, set your sights on what people can become rather than what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, that is input, thinking, attitude, performance. You've got to take this person, and and if you can show them what they can do once, then you can also say, you made a mistake, and you've set the standard for yourself right there. You showed me that you can do it. Now let's shoot for doing it every time. And to me, our job as coaches is building people. Not tearing them down, but building people, making them believe in themselves and what they can accomplish. And you think of how important their participation in athletics has been to later on when they get a job, and how successful they are with that job, and what part athletics played in preparation for that.
Kind of along those same lines, as far as building people up, how do you go about with an athlete, instilling confidence in them, but at the same time making sure it's authentic praise, and at the same time it's not inflating their ego?
Well, once in a while you have to deflate an ego. One of the things you got to, there's every once in a while you find somebody that thinks so highly of themselves that it affects the team or something, and you have to deflate that a little bit, so now you can build a real person. But we always had a rule with our coaches, a 9-to-1 rule, that I wanted 9 pats on the back for every kick in the butt. And we may not achieve that, but I didn't want a 1-to-9. I didn't want 1 pat on the back for every 9 kicks in the butt. Or our job is to build people, but every once in a while you gotta get their attention too.
As you mentioned before we got on, or I think it was earlier in the conversation, this will be your 50th year coaching at Linfield. Thinking back on the whole span of your career, is there a particular year that sticks out to you, like, oh, this might have been my favorite year? And if so, why?
Boy, are you talking about just at Linfield?
No, it can be at Hillsboro High as well.
Well, there was a lot of favorites, our favorite moments or whatever it happened to be. But we won 3 state baseball championships and 1 football. And then we reversed it at Linfield. We won 1 baseball and 3 football national championships. Why was it? Why was it 1 and 3 and 1 sports in high school and the opposite 3 in college? But in 1966, we won the baseball championship in the spring of the year at Hillsboro, and in the fall of the year, we won the football championship. So I coached back-to-back state championships in baseball and football, and the people of Hillsboro surprised us at a banquet at the end of the football season by giving us a paid vacation to Las Vegas and the Rose Bowl.
Wow.
It was 7 days. Everything was paid for in advance.
Was it you and your wife, or you and the kids got to go too? Who got to go?
Grandma and Grandpa took care of the kids.
Yeah.
And it was just Joan and I. But that was pretty special. At Linfield, then we won 3 in football and 1 in baseball. Probably a special one was Northwest Iowa, which was the second one, and we were behind 22-0 with about 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, and completely outplayed. And we came back. Well, we had a 4th down with about 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, and 4th down and long yardage, and we kicked a field goal, and it was highly criticized because, we were behind 22-0, and we're going for 3 points, and people are saying, you need 7 points, you don't need 3 points, But my belief was, if we were going to stand any chance at all, we're going to have to kick a field goal someplace in the game. With 22 points, 3 touchdowns is not going to do it. And are we either going to have to go for 2 points, or something. And there were people that left the game and went downtown to the Blue Moon. Yeah, and then when after we won the game, the people showed up at the Blue Moon and told them that we won, and they missed out on it. But so that was pretty special. And then the fact that to be in a Oregon State Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame, and then to be in 2 National Hall of Fames, the NAIA Baseball Hall of Fame and the NC2A Football Hall of Fame. And at the Football Hall of Fame, I was inducted. I sat next to Eddie Robinson at every event we went to. He was a head coach at Grambling, and he was being inducted, but they did everything in alphabetical order. And so the 2 R's, we were side by side in chairs at every event that they held. That was also Don James got inducted the same year at the University of Washington. But to be in the Hall of Fame with Woody Hayes and all of those guys, that's pretty special.
No doubt, Coach. That's freaking awesome. That's what that is. Speaking about your legacy, obviously great legacy. What do you want to be remembered for?
I think having a positive impact on people and their development. The thing that kept me in coaching is probably winning. And the thing that I get the greatest satisfaction out of is seeing our kids graduate and being successful at their chosen career. And I've had over 120 become head high school coaches, and that doesn't include assistant coaches, and that doesn't include people going into administration. And I've had 19 become head college coaches, and that I'm pretty proud of, because to me, they can have a positive impact on a lot of people.
Impact multiplication. Thinking back to your Linfield days or your Hillsboro days, what was the greatest challenge within coaching?
Well, I guess I'd rather talk about what the challenge is today rather than what it was then, because to me, I think one of our major problems in education today is the way that they look at activities. My entire time of coaching in high school and playing in high school, every coach was a full-time faculty member. That doesn't happen today. And so you're relying on people coming after work someplace to help coach. And to me, if that's educationally sound, then why aren't we doing it in English and biology and math, picking people to come in after work and teaching math or teaching those things? To me, if a coach is doing the right job, they're doing more counseling than the counselors will ever do. They're having a greater impact. If I was a high school principal and starting a new building, the first people I would hire would be the football, basketball, baseball, track coaches, because they're going to have an impact on more people than any single person in that building is going to have. And to me, in order to play sports today, you got to pay to play. I don't know if there's a high school in the state of Oregon that has every coach is a full-time member of faculty member. But when I was coaching, you didn't have those problems, and our administration was very supportive of athletics and at that time, an awful lot of the principals in different school districts were previous football coaches, and they probably had their whole careers in that community. And they were leaders. Community had confidence in them. They had good relationships, and it was just a career for them. And they went from football coach to vice principal to principal and moved on up.
Yeah. No, I had Coach Knudsen on, and that's the exact same thing he said. We need more coaches as administrators and more coaches as teachers back inside the building. So that's good stuff right there, Coach. Was there ever a difference in approach between Coach Rutschman, the football coach, and Coach Rutschman, the baseball coach, or was it consistent all the way through?
I think pretty consistent. I mean, we worked hard on fundamentals. We started wanted to get maximum repetitions in practice. I wanted our hitters in baseball to get more cuts than any of our opponents would get in a practice, and quality cuts, more ground balls than our opponents, and so our practice organization was like that. And our football practices were to some degree the same way. I know that there's very successful coaches that changed their practices up, and stuff like this. We didn't, because I didn't want to have to take time to explain a new drill. I wanted to pick good drills, and we would go from one drill to another, and all the teaching of the drill happened in the first week of practice. And then after that, we got things done with quality reps, but maximum reps.
I like asking this question. Why is the sport of fill in the blank, whether it's football or baseball, up to your discretion. Why is the sport of football or baseball the greatest sport, in your opinion?
Well, I've coached football, basketball, and baseball, and they're all important, from an educational, from an athletic standpoint. But to me, football has more to offer as far as the development, the total development of a person. You get a commitment to excellence in every sport. Courage is important, and toughness is important. But it's different in football than it is in basketball, and it's different in baseball. There is, when you're a 150-pound defensive back and you have a 220-pound running back coming at you, you don't have a time to have a committee meeting to decide whether you're going to tackle him or not. There's courage involved in that, and there's a certain amount of toughness. And to me, our nation as a whole, our world as a whole, are lacking so many things, I mean, to me, you can develop honesty better in football than you can in any of those other sports, because you got referees, you got penalties, you got film and stuff like this. If you have a penalty, it affects the whole team, and how important is honesty? To me, honesty gives you respect. It gives you credibility. It gives you integrity. And now people can trust you. And now you can have relationships. Excuse me. You can have open communication, not guarded communication. You stop and think about it. You and I both have people that we can have open communication with. In other words, they say something and we believe it to be true. But we also know people that say things and we say, well, wait and see. They've said things before, that haven't. So it's guarded communication. And you cannot have relationships unless you have open communication. You can't have it without you can't have it without trust. If you don't have trust, I don't want to work for somebody I can't trust, and I don't want people working for me that I can't trust. And when we're hiring people, that is one thing. There's two things that I am going to dig deep into. One is trust and honesty. And I'm going to ask as many people as I can find that know this person, and I know them, and I can trust their word, to rate this person from 0 to 10 on honesty. And if they're not a 10, I want to know why, But trust to me is important. It's critical. And the other thing is I want hard workers. I tell our coaches, if I'm hiring them, that I want you to understand that I'm this is not an 8 to 5 job. This is an 8 to when we get done job, And if you can't buy into that, then you need to look someplace else.
It's an 8 to next morning 8 job. That's what
it is 8 till we get the job done, And but I want workers, and in coaching, and I told our coaches, one time I had called a timeout in practice, and I wanted to get all the coaches together, and normally when I do that, the players they're not comfortable because they know there's probably some 10-yard sprints coming, Well, this time I wanted to talk to the coaches, and I said, do you guys expect our kids to work hard on every play? And, they said, yeah. And I said, should they expect you to be coaching hard on every play? And you're not doing it. And I don't want to hear this anymore. I don't want to hear a line coach or a receiver coach saying, nice job. I want to hear a nice job because you did this. You took your first step there and your position on contact was there and stuff like this. Or you needed to do this, but I want coaching on every play. and I don't want to hear nice run when you're coaching the line or you're coaching the receivers and the back makes a nice run. So anyway, to me, those are things that are important.
No doubt, if you could coach any player, past or present, who would it be and why?
Who would it be?
Mm-hmm.
Well, golly, I tell you, it wouldn't make any difference. But I loved coaching. I mean, we had some players that were maybe dominating in the conference. Maybe the best that the conference has ever seen. But we had some that uh, probably wouldn't have started on any other conference team, but we wouldn't have won without them probably because they didn't cause us. I divided players up in, can they cause us to win? Can they prevent us from losing? And can they cause us to lose? And we had a lot of players that played on the national championship teams. Not a lot of players, but we had players that played on the national championship teams that started for 3 years that probably wouldn't have played on any other team, and I don't think would have won without them. But that was fun to see them
Mm.
and see how they went at it and figured out a way to win.
Yeah, can you kind of dive into why they're such an integral part of your team, but from a skill standpoint, they probably would have started on another team?
Well, they didn't cause us to lose, and they got the job done and they figured out a way. I mean, we had a couple of guards that said they weighed 210 pounds, but I don't know if they ever saw 210. And they started for us for 3 years, and they played against guys that transferred from University of Washington to POU, and they were huge, and they didn't move them, but they didn't get involved in plays, and they did it legally, but they didn't block them high, you know, they blocked them low and did it. But anyway, I like coaching the quarterbacks, and uh, we had quarterbacks that were very good, and then we had some that were uh, fairly average, but still won. We still won with them.
Yeah. Mentioned this to you beforehand, so my daughter always has a question for the guest of the day. And the Anela question of the day is, what is your favorite sport?
The one the one I was playing in as a player, that was it. Coaching wise, I loved coaching both football and baseball, and there were two different sports. But to me, winning in life and winning in sports, the very first thing I believe you have to do is prevent losing. And you lose. What causes you to lose in football? It's fumbles, it's turnovers, it's missed assignments, it's penalties. In basketball, it's turnovers, it's rebounding. To me, rebounding in basketball is highly underrated because if you can prevent the other team from only getting one shot at a basketball, they better shoot a high percentage. So that those rebounds are really important. But from an offensive standpoint, if you're getting multiple shots, you're getting multiple rebounds, and your odds go up on scoring points. In baseballs, it's base on balls get you beat. It's errors that get you beat. On offense, it's striking out that gets you beat, and so to me, you have to avoid those things first before you can win,
Yeah.
and in life, it's not telling the truth, it's lying, it's laziness, it's work ethic, it's not a commitment to, uh, it's, to me, those values that we talked about are the foundation blocks for success. To me, they should be. I've always said this, and I'll argue this with anybody, that at Linfield and at Hillsboro, I had the best classroom for teaching success skills, not computer skills, not surgery skills, but success skills, And to me, if you don't have those things in place, honesty, work ethic, commitment to excellence, handling adversity, teamwork, knowledge, understanding, and a respect for rules, if you don't have those things in place, you're going to beat yourself, And so, to me, I don't care if you've got a 4-point, if you got high SAT scores. If you don't have these things in place, you're going to have a rocky road ahead of you.
That's good stuff, Coach. Powerful answer. When you were talking, I was thinking about this when you're kind of dissecting the different sports and kind of the keys to success with the different sports is preventing not to lose.
In fact, I'd encourage you to do this. I've asked hundreds of people that are successful people this question. In fact, I was hired as a consultant at 4 different high schools for hiring a football coach. And in one particular case, there was a community member that was also part of the committee. And the very first thing the principal said to us when the committee met was, I want you to understand this. We're going to hire the teacher first. It was either a math or I think it was a math job and a football job. And when we broke at lunchtime, I happened to sit at the same table that this community member, and he was a person that worked for Pendleton Woolen Mills. And he said to me, he says, Ad, how do you feel like the meeting went this morning? And I said, I thought it went okay. I said, but there's something the principal said that always bothers me. And he says, what is it? And I said, you remember when the principal said we're going to hire the teacher first? I said, and he said, yeah. And I said, let me ask you this question. For whatever success you've enjoyed, personally or professionally, how important are the following things for whatever success you've enjoyed? Honesty, a work ethic, a commitment to excellence, handling adversity, a teamwork, knowledge, understanding, and a respect for rules, for laws, teamwork, positive attitude, positive relationships. And he said, well, that's everything. I said, okay, here at this high school, the principal said that we want to hire the teacher first. And which classroom are we going to develop these things the best in? Is it going to be in the math classroom, or could it possibly be in the football classroom? He says, well, I see what you mean. When we get back at work, and the principal said, let's get started now. And this guy says, before we get started, I got something I want to say. And he pointed his finger at the principal, and he says, I'm going to tell you something. We're going to hire a damn good football coach that is also a damn good math teacher. And the principal swallowed his tongue. He couldn't talk. And that's exactly what we did. And that person ended up by being highly successful. Then he became a principal at a different school, and that chain reaction continued. Yeah. But to me, that's the way that school districts should look at things, that this is another classroom, and if our coaches aren't treating it that way, then we've hired the wrong coach, But our sports program should be the best classroom for developing these things, And winning is important because winning draws kids out, stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with, I've asked hundreds of people this question, but education, they are clueless right now.
No, that's a great anecdote, Coach, and something I absolutely agree with. And I heard that exactly what you're talking about 50 times back when I was working at Linfield as a recruiting coordinator and assistant DB's coach, because anytime we'd have recruits on campus and Coach Smith would do his presentation, it's exactly what he touched on as far as, the football field being the best classroom for exactly what you just laid out.
Yep.
Going back just a little bit, I kind of talked about, was there a difference in approach between, Ad Rutschman, the football coach, and Ad Rutschman, the baseball coach? I want you to kind of dissect a little bit. Okay, we have a struggling quarterback and a struggling baseball pitcher. What was the mental gymnastics like between those two positions, and how you went about navigating how to pull them out of a rut?
Well, to me, in baseball, you've got either pitchers or throwers. Throwers are people that throw hard and have good stuff but can't find the plate, and that's a problem. And throwers aren't probably going to pitch for me. I will take somebody that has less velocity but can throw strikes. And if I were a major league coach, I would probably offer a bonus or an incentive to any pitcher that could throw 27 outs in a game. In other words, he's not striking anybody out, but even good hitters are probably going to be failures 2 out of 3 times, And so, but if to me, you got to avoid losing, and one of the causes of losses is base on balls. And so that guy that can't find the plate probably isn't going to play for me. I'm going to find somebody that can throw strikes. And my idea of recruiting pitchers is I want to find somebody that is capable of maybe striking out 10 in a game and not walking anybody. And he may not strike out 10, but he's capable. I'm more interested in the fact that he doesn't walk anybody, but this is a problem that I see in baseball today. I'm seeing this in the Northwest Conference. I don't think the pitching is anywhere near what it used to be, because you got guys that are giving up 10 hits in a ball game, and there are 10 runs in a ball game, and they're making the all-league team. Quarterbacks, to me, the one thing in practice that I'm very conscious of is how many times our defense touches the ball that our quarterback throws. Because again, if our defense touches the ball, to me, I'm thinking that in a game is maybe a pass interception. And so I tell our quarterbacks, your number one job is ball security and no fumbles, and I don't want the defense touching the ball. And it's a tough job, because when do you hold on to the ball for just a split second longer? And when do you get rid of it a split second earlier, to avoid the sack? And it's a tough position. But to me, it's, again, avoid losing, avoid doing the things that cause us to lose. But we work every day on arm strengthening drills, on accuracy, on a quick slant. I want the ball 1 foot in front of the receiver's face, so we're working on accuracy on that, and so that I can tell every time we throw it how accurate it is. And on a 10-yard out, I want the ball thrown away from, make the receiver run away from the defensive back, and if he's not doing that, then we're not accurate on that. So, those are the things that I worked on, and the guy that does the best job of it's gonna start for us.
Yeah. What does the word team mean to you?
Team?
Yeah.
The team is number one. I'm a part of the team. How can I help the team? How can I help this team win? What is my job, and how can I improve my job? And it is not how many times am I going to catch the ball, or how many times am I going to carry the ball. I lost a receiver one time when he called me and wanted to know how many times I would be throwing the ball in the ball game and how many times he'd be catching it. And I said, there's a white line at the other end of the field. That's the only thing I'm interested in, is how many times we cross that white line. And I don't care if it's running or passing, and the defense is going to dictate an awful lot of whether we're going to run or whether we're going to throw, and what we're going to throw. And well, he didn't like my answer. But
yeah. How many out of all the years you coached, how many years did you coordinate?
How many years did I what?
Coordinate. How many years did you call the offense?
I guess all of them.
I like it. You mentioned 3 baseball state championships, 1 football state championship in high school, 3 national championships, then 1 baseball national championship. So total of 8 championships. And there's probably some more that I'm missing. But what separates, a championship team from just a good team? What makes that difference?
It's a lot of things. We lost to Cal Lutheran one time when they ended up by winning the national championship, and we lost to them, and our quarterback got dinged and nobody knew it. And he did a couple of weird things. He threw a backward pass that our receiver didn't catch, and Cal Lutheran picked it up, and they gave the ball to them, and that basically caused us to lose, and they end up winning it. We beat PLU in the regular season and then had to play them in the playoff and lost to them in a quarterfinal when they end up by winning the national championship. We lost to Concordia Lutheran out of Minnesota, I think it was, and we made a bad snap on a 4th down punt that they had a short field and went in and scored the winning touchdown, and they won. That was in the semifinals, and they won the national. So we were 3, possibly 3 other national championships away from being there. 1970, a team we lost, our only loss was to the University of Hawaii, and we got screwed over there. They were independent, and they played 9 of their 11 games at home, and they had the same official crew for every home game. And they were all Hawaiian, and they called 2 penalties on us that were both close to 50-yard penalties. They threw a pass with 1 minute and 30 seconds to go in the first half into the end zone, and they called pass interference on us. And at that time, you penalized at the point of attack, and they put the ball on the 1-yard line, I think it was. And they only beat us 19-17. The score should have been 17-7. We should have won, and that may be the best football team I've ever had at Linfield. We lost to San Diego University in baseball in a regional playoff, and they walked through the National Baseball Championship. We lost it. We had the game won on the 9th inning with 2 outs in the 9th inning, and a guy hit a 2-run home run to beat us, and they walked through the national championship. So there's another, but that was 1 pitch, and our pitcher had struck him out 3 times before, and he hit a ball that I think is still bouncing in the Los Angeles freeway. He hit 100 miles. So anyway, it's a whole bunch of different things, but they're just fluky things sometimes,
Yeah. How do you address, or how did you address, players who weren't meeting expectations or were struggling with effort on the field?
Well, you have a great ally in the sidelines. I had a great linebacker, but he had a tendency to do something a little extra at the end of a play or something, and I'd be coaching from the press box, and I'd say, put Jody on the phone. Jody, you see that white line around the field? Would you rather be inside that or outside of it? And he'd say, I'd rather be inside of it. I said, Jody, if you do what you did last time, you will not be inside the white line. Oh, okay, coach. It won't happen again. But to me, and then there was other things too that if somebody cussed or something like that, we figured the problem was in the legs, and so we solved it by having them work on their legs a little bit.
Yeah. Well, my legs would have been pretty big then if I played for you.
Well, I'll tell you what, we did. Penalties cause you to lose, but we would penalize our players for any penalty. They had to sit in a quarter eagle position on the goalpost for 1 minute for every yard penalized. And have you ever done that? You get in a quarter eagle position.
Is that like a wall? Is that like a wall sit? Is that just like a wall sit where you're 90 degrees essentially?
Yep. And with me, you could not move anything. Because if you start doing this for about 2 minutes, your arms start shaking, and I'd tell them, you're starting to move your arms, but if they
Was
had
there
if they had a 15-yard penalty, they had to do 15 minutes on the
was there
goalpost.
was there ever a repeal process? Like, if hey, coach, that was a bad call. Like, was there ever times where you forgave them? Like, yeah, it was a bad call.
Nope, never did do that. The penalty. But what happened was, as a team would be watching film on a Sunday night, and some of the players would say, hey, run that back. Take a look at Vincent there. Isn't he holding? They'd love to catch one of their other buddies in a penalty on the film so that would nail, even though the official didn't call it, would nail them on it.
Wow. If you could sit down with any coach, past, present, dead or alive, and you could ask that coach one question, who would the coach be, and what would the question be?
Who would the coach be? Well, I mean, today it would probably be Nick Saban, and the question would probably be about recruiting. What do you tell people? When you're recruiting them, it would. But Tom Osborne, at one time, I would like to have sat down with him and talked with him when he was at Nebraska. The interesting thing is that Mike Riley coached with me, and he played at Alabama under Bear Bryant, and he worked with John Robinson at USC and said he learned more football when he came to Linfield than he did anyplace else.
That's awesome. Did that make your year right there when he said that?
Yeah, I did. Made me feel good.
What did you do when your team faced a bad setback or a loss? What was that process post game communication?
Well, we looked at it, what caused it, and what do we need to do to change, and get better, and by and large, it was things that we did ourselves, I still believe that in most athletic contests, they shouldn't, in the papers, they shouldn't say, this team beat this team. It should say, this team lost because of this. I think more teams lose games than the other team wins games. And I think that's true in life. You take what's going on in our country, and it doesn't make any difference if it's our city or county or state or whatever it happens to be. Who the heck can you believe anymore? The trust factor is when I grew up, a handshake and your word were pretty much a contract.
Yeah.
And that's not true anymore. You've got to have things in writing.
If you could go back and give advice to your younger self or aspiring football coaches and baseball coaches, what would that advice be?
Well, I think one of the things that is, take a look at your football schedule, and do you see anybody doing something weird? Different than anybody else. For example, every day at Linfield, we spent 5 minutes defending the run and shoot, and we spent 5 minutes defending the veer in practice every day, because of one time in high school, we had somebody surprise us with a formation with an offense that we only had the one game to prepare for. And I made up my mind that wasn't enough time. And so we spent 5 minutes, even though we may not see the run and shoot one game, but if we are going to see it, in high school, for example, we ended up by seeing the run and shoot with one team. We spent every week prior to that game, we spent at least 5 minutes every day against that run and shoot, because I didn't want it to surprise our kids, the day or the week of the game, that, okay, now we're going to use this defense to defense this. We had practiced it for 5 minutes every day for X number of weeks before we got there, so it was nothing new. And to me, we did a great job at that.
That's good stuff, Coach. I was very excited to have you on today, and I'm really happy you were able to join me. But at the same time, I feel like I don't want to leave no stone unturned. So if there's anything that you want to talk about or anything you want to address, coaching, teaching, leadership, any final advice, what would that be? Then the floor is open to you.
My feeling is everybody needs a mentor, and you learn something. Pick good people that think to some degree like yourself and improve yourself by listening to them. And I mean, to me, this podcast that you have going, that's for different people. And this could be employers. I don't know what the different people you're interviewing, but they listen to some of these things, and there should be some of these things that should fit in and make them better at their jobs. So I think I just think all of us have to. We don't do things by ourselves. We've got to pick up ideas from other people, but you better pick the right people. So what you're doing, to me, you should be able to sell this to people, and you should make a lot of people better.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why, I want to do this. One of the big ones was, after stepping away, I still want to do coaching long term. It was the right move for me and my family last year. But now I have however many episodes I do. I think this is going to be the 39th episode
Holy cow.
with you. It's 39 hours of professional development where exactly what you're saying. Like, I'm seeking mentorship, I'm seeking experiences, something that, is going to shape me, hopefully to be a better coach, someday. And there was a lot of other reasons, but, that was one of the big reasons was, if I'm not going to be coaching, I still want to learn and grow as a coach.
Yep.
And it's exactly what you're saying. Just as far as, finding the right people and listening to what they say and, heeding their advice and, so on and so forth. Coach, I really appreciate your time. I have the utmost respect for you.
Well,
When I was coaching back at Linfield, you told me on, I think it was two separate occasions, and this was before I got into the Division I level. He's like, you can be a millionaire as a coach, as a high school coach. And I was like, he's kind of crushing my dream right now. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear, hey, go for it. Follow your dream. But no, I got hey, you can be a millionaire as a high school coach.
Well,
but I know we talked about that one time, and, and that's where you initially told me the quote, like, be careful trying to improve on happy.
Yep. Be careful of trying to improve on happy, and it's, the line coach at Linfield just took the job at Oregon State, I think. And I'm thinking he could have stayed at Linfield and probably made a career here. And he's liable to go to Oregon State, and in 2 years, they may all get fired, and now he's going to be looking for a job again, and I don't know, he's that college coaching, so much of it is you better find the right
staff to align yourself with.
Yep, the right job and the right person. Other than that, you're liable to have your bags packed and be ready to move.
One of the other big reasons that I love doing the podcast, was when I lost my mom. I was just kind of looking for videos, looking for audio clips, pictures, text messages, something to kind of, draw me back, and just to have as a memoir of her. And, that's what I really enjoy about this, is because I get to do that for, whoever I interview, whereas I get to leave a digital footprint of who this person is, their identity, their philosophy, their value system. And, that gets to be shared with, future generations of their family that they might not get to meet or not get afforded to meet. So I guess that my last question for you is, for your great grandkids, I don't know if you got great grandkids right now, but for your great grandkids, if there was some imparting wisdom that you would impart on them, because they might not get to meet their great-great-grandpa, what would that wisdom be?
Do what's right. If people make decisions based upon power, positioning, and principles. And, the people that make decisions on power, it's I'm the boss, you do it my way or the highway. And the people that are making it on positioning are politicians. They're all what's in it for me. And to me, the only way to make decisions, and this is a problem that I have with politicians. You know what the Greek root of poly is?
No.
Politics is? Poly means many, and ticks is bloodsuckers.
You said bloodsuckers?
So politics.
I had no idea that's what it means.
Yeah, politics is the Greek root of it. Poly means many, and ticks is bloodsuckers. And to me, that's what politics is, But anyway, to me, the people that are in politics, they should be making decisions on this is right for America or this is wrong for America, not what's in it for me. And every one of those people are basing their decisions on what's in it for me.
Some good wisdom, Coach, as far as
So anyway, my grandkids, do what's right. Don't do what's popular. Don't do it from pressure from the peer group. Do what's right and what's wrong. And when you're about 5 years old, you got a pretty good idea what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff, Coach. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for jumping on. I release one episode a week, so I already have one recorded for this week, but I'll release your episode next Friday.
Okay.
And I'll make sure to share it with you, and I'll make sure to. I know you don't have social media, so I can't tag you on social media to help with the marketing, but I'll make sure to share it with you, and I'll make sure to share it with your son Don.
All right. Thank you.
I appreciate you hopping on, Coach. It means a lot.
You're gonna, you need to pick the right job. You're gonna make a heck of a coach, but pick the right job.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I'm going to start doing some hopefully some private beach volleyball lessons and some football lessons, and that might become my calling. Just do that and enjoy doing the podcast and learning from others. So we'll see.
All right. Good.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Don, for setting everything up.
Thank you. You did a great job. Thanks. I'll tell you the real story one of these days.
You guys have a good one.
Okay. Thank you.